Heidi Akine, on again, off again. A woman suffering multiple fractures waits 11 days in Waikato hospital for acute surgery. No bedding or gown changes and apparently on the wrong ward. Is this the human face of a health crisis? Family First isn't a charity, it's about advocacy, not education, according to the Supreme Court. The Human Rights Commission warns schools about discriminating against students based on sexual orientation. The dirty little secret about laundry detergents, some of them are next to useless. The bodies of dozens of migrants believed to be from Mexico were found in an abandoned truck in southern Texas. And Canadian miners strike gold, a frozen baby woolly mammoth.
RNZ News at 5. Ahi Marie ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Waikato District Health Board has apologised to a woman who needs surgery on her broken leg and has spent 11 days waiting in hospital. A fall from a horse on Friday, June 17th, left Georgina Lloyd largely immobilised with her left foot skewed to the side. She needs screws and plates before her broken bones can heal. But she says she waited in the emergency department for 7 hours after an ambulance transferred her from Thames Hospital. Ever since, Ms Lloyd has been largely confined to a bed in the ear, nose and throat ward, waiting for surgery.
You sit there for hours every morning going, is the doctor even going to come? I don't know. I don't know that there's no real routine, there's no being told.
The Health Board has moved Ms Lloyd to the orthopaedic ward and says there was a lack of clear communication with the patient about her treatment plan. A researcher says a Supreme Court decision over the charitable status of Family First shouldn't affect other charities as long as they're clear about their purpose. The court has ruled Family First doesn't qualify for charitable status, saying the group's work is not compatible with charity. Charities researcher Dr Michael Gume says Family First's deed has a very narrow purpose and discriminates against some people.
The difficult area is this one here. It's the public benefit area and the role of advocacy versus political activity, which is commented on the judgment as well. They are the complex areas. But as far as I'm concerned, if you step over the mark and you're pushing for a particular political purpose, that is not charitable.
Dr Gume says charities should be seeking to help people rather than telling them their point of view is wrong. Family First says the court's decision is a sad day for freedom of speech and sets a disturbing precedent. At least 46 migrants have been found dead in an abandoned truck on the outskirts of the Texan city of San Antonio. 16 others, including 4 children, were taken to hospital after the vehicle was discovered next to rail tracks. The survivors appeared to be suffering from heat stroke and heat exhaustion. No water or air conditioning was found within the truck. The local fire chief, Charles Hood, says those who discovered the bodies are being offered counselling.
We're not supposed to open up a truck and see stacks of bodies in there. None of us come to work imagining that.
The discovery was made close to a major highway known to have been used by people smugglers travelling via Mexico in the past. The Green Party say it's unclear if Simon O'Connor is sorry for celebrating the overturning of Roe v Wade or making the National Party look silly. Mr O'Connor posted, "Today is a good day" on Facebook in reference to the US Supreme Court decision over the weekend. He later removed the message and today said he'd apologised to his caucus. Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson says it's unclear what he's sorry for.
I'm not sure if he has apologised for the comments or whether he has apologised for making the National Party look silly, but he needs to apologise for creating distress and exploiting the distress of people whose lives will be damaged because of this abhorrent decision in the US.
Nationals leader Christopher Luxon has repeatedly ruled out any changes to abortion law on his watch. And a pseudo-documentary using footage from the Christchurch mosque attacks has been banned. It was classified as objectionable content under an interim decision this afternoon by Acting Chief Censor Rupert Ablett-Hampson. The 33-minute video uses extensive live stream footage of the March 15th attacks and has a voiceover claiming they were fabricated. Mr Ablett-Hampson says it's now an offence for anyone to download, view or share the video. To sport, and the All Blacks captain Sam Cane is adamant the COVID outbreak within the squad hasn't disrupted their preparations for Saturday's test against Ireland at Eden Park. Outside back Will Jordan is the latest to test positive and be ruled out of the match, with head coach Ian Foster, 2 of his assistant coaches and 2 other players already isolating. Former Ireland coach Joe Smith has been called in to help out, and Cane says the team is tracking well.
In terms of disruptiveness, surprisingly it hasn't been too much at all. You know, coaches are stepping up. We've got a really experienced leadership group now when you look around our group, and one that I trust immensely, and guys are just stepping up, and it's been a good first few days.
The All Blacks team to play Ireland is named on Thursday. Rafa Nadal returns to Wimbledon for the first time in 3 years, but for the first time at the All England club, he won't have sparring partner Roger Federer for company. Their epic rivalry includes 3 successive Wimbledon finals from 2006. Federer has played every Wimbledon since 1999, winning a record 8 titles, but is missing due to injury, and Nadal says it's strange not having him around.
I think in some way we push each other. When you have somebody like him, like a rival that he's amazing good, helps you to let you know the things that you have to do to be better.
Nadal has his first round match tonight. And the football Ferns play Wales in Spain tomorrow morning. The 2 sides have met twice before with a win each. That's the news.
Preparing for a win.
Most of the players, they're able to play 2 positions so that if someone goes down, whether it's with COVID, at least someone else can take their place.
A hard loss.
For us, it is frustrating that we haven't quite had some of the results go away, but we do want to keep putting our focus and energy into the cricket.
And a challenge.
COVID has been around us for a couple of years now, and we've planned for what will happen in this situation. And right now, we're just preparing for Ireland.
Always playing fair. Morning reports weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're with Lisa Owen on Checkpoint next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Wednesday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Showers with possible thunderstorms in Northland today. Rain in the far north tomorrow. Waikato, Waitomo, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Also Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Cloudy periods, scattered showers tomorrow. From Taranaki to Kapiti, including Taumaru Nui and Taihape. Cloud increasing. Rain is developing in Taranaki this evening and elsewhere tomorrow morning, clearing tomorrow afternoon. For Wellington, also Nelson and Marlborough, periods of rain, possibly heavy, clearing tomorrow morning and then mainly fine. Patchy rain for Canterbury, clearing this evening, fine tomorrow. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, partly cloudy with 1 or 2 showers. Rain in Fiordland tomorrow morning, possibly thundery, and showers increasing in Westland for a time. Mainly fine today for Otago and Southland, occasional rain about Southland and Clutha tomorrow, and a few spots elsewhere. And for Kohu, the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, rain at times tomorrow. It's 7 minutes past 5. I will have the updated news headlines and traffic for you at around 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint e tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. We begin tonight inside Waikato Hospital, where the health crisis has become an excruciating reality for a woman who has waited 11 days for surgery after being placed in the wrong ward. This afternoon, the DHB has been forced to apologise after the woman who suffered 2 snapped bones in her left leg had her surgery delayed multiple times. And to make matters worse, in almost 2 weeks, she lay in the same gown and her hospital sheets were not changed. Katie Todd has Georgina's story.
A tumble from a horse has turned into a nightmare inside Waikato Hospital for Georgina Lloyd. She was taken there from Thames Hospital in an ambulance on June 17, her foot swollen, bruised and skewed sideways, needing urgent surgery for a snapped tibia and fibula. But on arrival, she sat for 7 hours, unable to move in the emergency department waiting room. Ms. Lloyd eventually made it into a bed in the ear, nose and throat ward, where she's waited and waited. It has now been 11 days.
It's a bit concerning. I'm getting worried that it's going to not repair properly. If nobody's talked to me about what the processes are or, you know, what's expected from you or, you know, they've not really said, oh, when you go into theatre, this will happen or that will happen.
Ms Lloyd begins each day as a nil by mouth, meaning no food or drink from 2 a.m. until 10 a.m. And each day she learns she's unlikely to make the surgery list. After no luck last week, or over the long weekend, her message to the health board is, please get me out.
I've seen people come and go in my ward. I've seen someone else who has a similar injury came in on Saturday and they were talking about doing her today.
Ms Lloyd's attempts to get moved into the private health system have been unsuccessful because ACC says it would need paperwork she can't get hold of, and a lack of hygiene has added to her almost 2-week discomfort. Ms Lloyd says in the ear, nose and throat ward, her bedsheets and gown weren't changed. Last week she says she spotted faeces smeared across the bathroom wall which didn't get cleaned off for days.
Eventually it was repulsive, so I cleaned it off myself. And other things, there's nobody gets bathed, so there's people who can't really get out of bed, not getting washed, and they smell to the degree that it's nauseating. Like, people have come up and visited and had to stick their head out the window because it is nauseating.
After RNZ contacted Waikato District Health Board last night, Ms Lloyd was moved into the orthopaedic ward, given a fresh hospital gown and bedsheets, and this morning she was told she was third on the surgery wait list. She told Checkpoint so much time had passed her broken bones had begun to callous, which would mean a longer surgery. This afternoon, the health board said staff had met with Ms Lloyd to discuss her concerns and to extend their sincere apologies. In a statement, it explained it's been scheduling extra acute theatres to cope with high demand. But in this case, it conceded there was a lack of clear communication with the patient about her treatment plan and also an unacceptable level of cleanliness. Yet health advocates say Ms Lloyd's case is just another symptom of a health system in crisis. Here's Association of Salaried Medical Specialists Executive Director Sarah Dalton.
We are increasingly concerned about the time people are having to wait for acute and urgent surgeries, and we're also really concerned about when hospital beds are available, they're often not in the appropriate ward. This is not the first instance I've heard of or the first hospital I've heard of that has had to put a patient in a non-surgical ward or a non-orthopaedic ward.
Orthopaedic Association President John McKee explains the urgent and acute treatments are usually only part of a surgeon's full workload.
You can rest assured if there are problems and pressures and delays getting the acute cases done, or it would be an even worse situation with respect to the planned and elective operations that would normally be done.
Waikato District Health Board declined to be interviewed.
And we're yet to confirm if Georgina has had surgery, as we've been unable to contact her this afternoon. It is 12 minutes past 5. Kia mau tunu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Transpower is urging power companies to boost their electricity generation this evening to reduce the risk of power cuts. The lines company has asked the power companies to ensure energy and reserve offers are accurate and to increase that supply. It's warning if there's not enough power in the network this evening, households may face outages. Now, the peak period is from 5 p.m. to 7:30 tonight, and if the situation worsens, Transpower could declare another grid emergency like it did on Thursday, and that could mean asking households to turn off some lights. It is 13 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. At least 46 migrants have been found dead inside a truck in Texas. The 18-wheeler had been abandoned next to rail tracks in the city of San Antonio near a major highway that's been used by people smugglers travelling via Mexico in the past. Close to 20 people were taken to hospital, including 4 children. So far, no children are among the dead. There was no sign of water or air conditioning in the truck. The BBC's Azadeh Mosheri has more.
Emergency responders crowd together after dozens of bodies were found in an abandoned lorry. More than a dozen survivors, including children, were rushed to hospital.
A worker who works in one of the buildings up here behind me heard a cry for help, came out to investigate, found the trailer with the doors partially open, opened them up to take a look, and found a number of deceased individuals inside.
The lorry was found in San Antonio, Texas, around 250 kilometers from the US-Mexico border. The victims were believed to be migrants trying to make their way into the United States.
The patients that we saw were hot to the touch. They were suffering from heat stroke, heat exhaustion, no signs of water in the vehicle. It was a refrigerated tractor trailer, but there was no visible working AC unit on that rig. We're not supposed to open up a truck and see stacks of bodies in there. None of us come to work imagining that.
The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, has blamed US President Joe Biden for the deaths, arguing they're a result of his deadly open border policies. State officials in Texas have been dealing with record levels of migrant crossings from Mexico as they've prepared for a surge during a hot summer, with temperatures reaching 39.4 degrees Celsius on Monday. As a federal investigation is launched, these deaths are a reminder of how perilous that journey is.
The Human Rights Commission's warning schools they can't refuse to enrol students or discriminate against them because of their sexual orientation or family status. In a statement, the Commission says while it broadly supports a school's right to maintain and express its religious beliefs and special character, it would be concerned if that meant students or parents were excluded because of their views about marriage or gender. Now, the warning follows controversy surrounding Tauronga's Bethlehem College, a Christian school that specifies marriage is created by God and is between a man and a woman exclusively. Joining us now from the Human Rights Commission is Andre Afamasanga, the Manager of Conversion Practices Response Service. Kia ora, Andre.
Talofa kia ora, Lisa.
Why have you put out this quite detailed statement now?
Well, first of all, the passing of the Conversion Practices Prohibition legislation has allowed or given way for the Commission to provide some education and training in certain settings such as religious settings and school settings and cultural settings to talk about conversion practices. So while what happens in schools doesn't necessarily constitute the level of what is a conversion practices, the ideologies that underpin conversion practices are often religious, biblical interpretation, and so there's a place for the Commission to play a role to work with schools and religious settings to talk about what are some of those beliefs that could either lead to conversion practices or have a prohibitive or an exclusionary effect on rainbow communities, for instance.
Right, so if a school states in its principles and beliefs that it doesn't support same-sex marriage or a man and woman together is the only approved relationship in God's eyes, is that discriminatory in and of itself?
Well, I think being the Human Rights Commission, we broadly support the right for people to hold and express even a religious view. That is not in question. I think what is in question is when, and all human rights needs to be balanced, is when those particular views or the practice or expression of those views might have an effect upon people, such as rainbow communities as well. So when one holds that view, I think the bigger conversation here is how does this view and the expression of that view affect people such as rainbow people or rainbow students within a community? And I think that's a type of conversation that rather than be shut down or be put to the side because people might say, well, this is our religious belief and get used to it. I think there is a space and a time to actually have a mature conversation that is inclusive and to consider how these views might affect a certain community group, for instance.
Yeah, in saying that, the rules around schools require that students feel physically and emotionally safe in the environment, right? So if your school is stating principles and beliefs that, don't make you feel welcome, are they meeting their requirements to provide an emotionally safe environment when they're saying things like the only approved relationship in the eyes of God is between a man and a woman? And if you're not in that kind of relationship, you may feel excluded.
Yeah, I think that is the challenge of the current climate that we live in, actually, and that is for religious schools to consider how does it maintain and express its religious belief and special character in a way that doesn't necessarily have this exclusionary effect upon parents or children's...
Is that possible, Andre? Realistically, is that actually possible? When you're saying these things, isn't it exclusionary, full stop?
Well, I think we often in these types of discourse and debate, it's often one type or style of a church, for instance, or a religion that often gets a lot of the space and dominates the debate. But, within Christianity, for instance, there should be accommodation for a wide variety of diverse views and including biblical interpretation. And in fact, there are many Christians, for instance, that allow people to have a coherent identity, and that is someone that is particularly or gay or trans, but also have and also call themselves Christian. So I think that's a mature conversation, and I think we need to be able to look at what are our views. What's a view that's a dead end one, and what's one that we can actually have a broader conversation about and see if the Bible can support an alternate ideological view, for instance. And I do think in terms of schools that just by nature of who schools are and having the academic, being an environment for academic thought, and then perhaps at a religious school, which is, hopefully meant to be more inclusive than the general population, that these are the very types of conversations that I think schools should take seriously, religious settings should take seriously, and really think about.
Is it a dead-end belief if you require a parent of a child to sign up to basically a charter which states that the school recognises one relationship and one relationship only? Is that a dead-end belief, to use your words?
I wouldn't want to say that I think people have their beliefs and they've got a right to those. I think, though, schools that are meant to provide an environment where students feel emotionally and physically safe, that is the question, and that's the challenge for schools. How do you provide that environment? How do you uphold your religious belief? And at the same time, how do you make sure that students that find themselves at an intersection are not feeling that there is no place for them? Mind you, some of these students might be questioning their sexuality, they might be rainbow themselves and have grown up in this religious community where they are feeling such a strong affinity to the beliefs, but this is a part of them that they can't throw away. And I often find as a former pastor that unfortunately there only seems to be sort of one way out, and that is sort of either agreement with a dominant religious view, and if you don't, then you'll have to walk out. And I just would hope that here in Aotearoa there might be another alternative pathway.
Given what you're saying then, have you had a conversation with Bethlehem College?
So the Commission has written to Bethlehem College to express our views and to also sort of request a meeting. And I think in general, especially given our work around the conversion practices prohibition legislation, is that this is the type of approach that we'd like to see more of. We'd like to not only meet with schools to hear their concerns in religious settings, we actually want to help facilitate a mature discussion going forward. And that includes sitting down with schools and school boards and to actually have these sort of gritty conversations really, and to find out together how can we uphold all human rights and balance them in such a way that really centres the safety of a child in a school or a student in a school.
Thank you for joining us this evening. That is Andre Afamasanga, who is from the Human Rights Commission. It is 22 minutes past 5. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the program this evening. The patient in Waikato Hospital with multiple fractures who's now been waiting 11 days for surgery in the wrong ward, no gown changes or sheet changes during that time. What do you make of that? Is that the human face of a health crisis? And also would love to hear your thoughts on the Human Rights Commission. They're warning schools that they can't refuse to enrol students or discriminate against them because of their sexual orientation. They're also asking for a sit-down with Bethlehem College over some of their stated practices and beliefs. Do let us know your thoughts. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz is the address. It is time for the headlines now. Ko Evie Arno tēnei.
Kia ora, Lisa. Waikato District Health Board has apologised to a woman who needs surgery on her broken leg and has spent 11 days waiting in hospital. The Supreme Court has ruled Family First doesn't qualify for charitable status, saying the group's work doesn't fit the description. The lobby group, which advocates conservative values, was fighting a decision to be deregistered by the charity's registration board. 46 people, believed to be migrants, have been found dead inside an abandoned truck on the outskirts of San Antonio in the US state of Texas. Almost 20 others, including 4 children, were taken to hospital after the vehicle was discovered next to rail tracks. Preliminary tests have confirmed that the illicit substance that hospitalised users in Wairarapa was fentanyl. A dozen people aged between 31 and 71 had a suspected fentanyl overdose at the weekend. The Greens say it's unclear if Simon O'Connor is sorry for celebrating the overturning of Roe v Wade or for making the National Party look silly. Mr O'Connor posted, "Today is a good day" on Facebook in reference to the US Supreme Court decision over the weekend. He later removed the message and today said he would apologise to his caucus. And a pseudo-documentary using footage from the Christchurch mosque attacks has been banned by the acting chief censor. The 33-minute video uses extensive live stream footage of the March 15th attacks and has a voiceover claiming they were fabricated. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic for the main centres, no crashes or delays to report. Weather permitting, there will be a few roadworks on Auckland's motorways tonight, including northbound lanes from Takanini to Manukau. I'll have updated headlines and traffic for you at around 5:40.
Kia ora rā e hoa. The Supreme Court has ruled Family First does not qualify for charitable status, saying the group's work doesn't fit the description. The lobby group, which advocates conservative values, was fighting a decision to be deregistered by the Charities Registration Board. Somyam Bamedi Party reports.
The Supreme Court found that Family First purpose crossed the line between education and advocacy. The panel of judges found its purpose was discriminatory and advocated for heterosexual marriages and conservative views to the disadvantage of others. Justice Mark O'Regan said the group's advocacy was not fair, balanced or respectful, and therefore was not charitable.
One-sided promotion of personally held views detracts from the cohesiveness of our pluralistic society and disempowers the receiver by failing fairly to inform them of alternative viewpoints on the subject. Family First's promotion is self-referential. It is not about community.
Family First has declined RNZ's request for an interview, but in a statement said it was a sad day for freedom of speech. Chief Executive Bob McCoskrie said an overly restrictive view of what was in the public benefit should concern everyone, and it appeared certain views of marriage and family were now out of bounds. He said the real question was whether other charities that were also political advocates would be targeted. But charities researcher Dr. Michael Goumay says Family First deed has a very narrow purpose that is clearly not charitable and discriminates against some people. He says most charities won't be affected by the decision, as long as they're clear about the charitable aspect of their purpose.
The difficult area is this one here. It's the public benefit area and the role of advocacy versus political activity, which is commented on the judgment as well. They are the complex areas. But as far as I'm concerned, if you step over the mark and you're pushing for a particular political purpose, that is not charitable.
However, Charities Law Director Sue Barker says charities should be able to advocate for causes they believe in. She says Family First was first deregistered for opposing the same-sex marriage bill, and while people may not agree with the organisation's views, that shouldn't be enough to deregister it as a charity.
The problem with using that as kind of the yardstick is that what happens when we have a decision maker who has a different view? And are we going to kind of lurch from one view to another? And I really am worried that if Family First can be deregistered for engaging in the democratic process, any charity can.
Ms Barker says the decision highlights the need for the government to clearly define what a charitable purpose is as part of its review of the Charities Act.
Now, let's get to some of your feedback. A number of you getting in touch about our earlier story about a patient in Waikato Hospital waiting 11 days for acute surgery and also raising hygiene issues at the hospital. This listener says, Waikato Orthopaedic has been in chaos for years. My sister waited for 5 days after a bike accident and several broken bones. Old building, no piped O2 or resuscitation equipment, low staff numbers, so poor care. And this one from Glynis on Facebook, disgusting treatment. There is no way to get treatment required in New Zealand hospitals except by shouting loudly. The polite patient gets no help. Bed sheets not changed for over 10 days, exclamation mark. And another listener says, I work in Dunedin Hospital. What you were describing sounds very common to me. Do keep your feedback coming. You can text us on 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Te Piramia kicks off the first day of her whirlwind trip to Europe this evening with meetings with the leaders of France and Spain. Jacinda Ardern is visiting the region in a push to get a trade deal with the European Union over the line and to attend the NATO Leaders Summit in Madrid tomorrow. Our political reporter Katie Scotcher is in Madrid and she joins us now. So Katie, what's on the agenda for those meetings?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, Jacinda Ardern will meet with Spain's President Pedro Sanchez in a few hours' time. I'm told they'll discuss strengthening people-to-people ties between the two countries. I'm also told Ms Ardern will use this in-person meeting to thank the President again for shipping 250,000 COVID-19 vaccines to New Zealand last year. That was when there was huge demand for COVID-19 vaccines, I think in about September, and that was when we had really low stocks, and Spain sent us 250,000 doses. Ms Ardern will then meet with the French President Emmanuel Macron later today. They are, of course, expected to discuss the New Zealand and European Union trade negotiations. France has pushed back on those sensitive areas of market access for agricultural products like sheep and beef meat and dairy during negotiations. So this could be an opportunity to address any of those outstanding problems as those trade talks reach closing stages. And the two leaders will also discuss the Christchurch call and the war in Ukraine.
And Ms Ardern's got a dinner date with the Spanish king.
That's right. The King of Spain is hosting all NATO partners for dinner at the Royal Palace tonight. Ms Ardern is, of course, attending the NATO Leaders Summit tomorrow, where she will participate in a session with Asia-Pacific partners, and that will look at the security challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. Before that dinner date, she will deliver the keynote speech at a conference here in Madrid focused on democracy-affirming technologies, and that speech is likely to focus on the Christchurch call.
Thanks, Katie. That's Katie Scotcher in Madrid there on the Prime Minister's trip to Europe. It is 29 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National, and it's time for the business news now. Ko taku hoa e nai called Giles Beckford, who joins us live from Wellington. And topical as usual, Giles, we've been talking about power generation and, you know, the fact that we're coming up to a high demand evening tonight. But there's still some retailers who are miffed that Genesis and Contact were cleared of any blame for last year's power blackouts. This is August blackouts, is it?
Indeed it is. It's the Electricity Authority confirmed the interim decision it made earlier in the year, where it said basically Transpower got it wrong and the two companies couldn't be accused of being behind the blackouts or trying to profit from the spike in wholesale prices that occurred as a result. And of course, we're seeing a sort of a replay of that this evening in the warning that comes from Transpower. Interestingly, this time round, they've been much quicker, they've been much more specific. They send out the signals quite early, and they've got the signals back from the power companies that there's juice there if they need it. But some of the smaller retailers, one of them being Electric Kiwi, is always unhappy with the way the authority operates, and in particular the way it tends to favour the big power companies, the big generator retailer companies, Genesis and Contact in this particular instance. And Luke Blinko was talking to us earlier in the day saying, this is just not believable that the authority can suggest that it wasn't an undesirable trading situation, which is what they call it in the trade. Basically, that's where something happens and people say you can't have any confidence in the electricity system anymore because these people just ran it, they gouged it, they played it for their own ends at the expense of other users. He's been a perpetual critic of the authority and the way it's operated and a lot of its decisions over the past year. This one didn't find any favour with them either. He finds it quite unbelievable. He's talking about possibly we may take a judicial review. Now, I have to say that the Electricity Authority probably spends more on law bills and legal advice than a lot of other government bodies would, because they always seem to be at the tail end of somebody's judicial review or legal unhappiness about it. We'll see what transpires. It may be just him blowing off some steam, but wait and see.
And this next topic, class action lawsuits, something that we probably normally associate with the US. So what's happening with that here?
Well, we've seen a few of them here, and I'll just bring a couple to mind. One is that the former investors of Ross Asset Management, which you remember went down and failed, 10, 11, 12 years ago. And they, investors in there, claimed that the ANZ Bank, which of course was the backer of or the banker to Ross Asset Management, should have known what was going on, and if they didn't, then they were negligent anyway, and they should have taken steps to alert the authorities. Now, they've taken a class action against ANZ on that one. There are customers of ANZ and ASB taking class actions against them on credit card financing and conditions there, and various payments. And the Law Commission has looked at the whole thing and said, look, we don't actually have a framework. We don't have legislative backing for this. It's hit and miss. It's whether the aggrieved parties can gather themselves together, whether they can find somebody, usually from Australia, to actually foot the legal case. And of course, these people, if they win, then, of course, they take a slice of any winnings. If they lose, then there are no fees paid for those taking the case. But the Law Commission says it's all unsatisfactory. We should be joining the international trend, and 40 other countries have got this sort of system for class action. So they're suggesting there should be a Class Action Act. That would set the legal parameters, the tests that should be used there for cases that should go forward, how people join in and the like. Even suggesting that there should be a public fund. So where there are public interest cases that might be determined in a class action lawsuit, that perhaps the taxpayer would foot it. It's up to the government, of course. It's 420-odd pages long, so I think they may have a few other things on their plate before they get to it, but it raises interesting issues. And the balance or the view from legal firms in the short term at least has been that they regard the recommendations as balanced, as fair, sensible. But then I suppose, being lawyers, they would say that, wouldn't they?
And Joel, shall we take a quick gallop around the markets, please?
Share market, it's risen for a third day in a row. Praise the Lord on that one. Perhaps just a modest 21-point rise, but over the 11,000 barrier, so there's something psychological about that perhaps. New Zealand dollar is sitting 63, in fact it's a whisker under 63 US cents, 90.9 Australian, a farthing over 51 British pence, and for those who follow Bitcoin, it's hanging around 20,740 US a coin.
Thanks, Giles. Ka kite, that's Giles Beckford with business there. And now to a dirty secret about laundry detergents. Some are so ineffective, you're better off just washing your clothes in water. That's according to tests carried out by Consumer New Zealand on 55 liquid and powdered clothes cleaners. And it turns out that some of the pricier products are the worst performers. Here from Consumer New Zealand to talk us through the results is James LePage. Hey, James, were you surprised at how bad some of these results were?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for a few years now, so quite often you have some that don't perform so well, but we've got a good lump of them this time around that performed worse than water, and that's never good to see.
So, I mean, how do you test them? On what stains, and how do you measure effectiveness?
Yeah, so we test in a laboratory, so we don't just grab our kids' dirty washing from the weekend. We actually buy in test swatches that are stained with different stains. So we've got everyday greasy grime, we've got baked on tomato, grass stains, blood, even chocolate ice cream in there. So the full shebang of what you might experience in your day-to-day. And we run those through washing machines on a test cycle, and then just see how they go. And so at the end of that, when we pull them out, we actually use a piece of equipment called a spectrophotometer, and that measures how clean things are. So it's not a subjective thing. We don't just eyeball things and go, oh yeah, this one's a bit clean. We actually use a piece of equipment to check.
James, your cell line is a bit dodgy. Maybe that's another investigation for you, but if I could just get you to move around a little bit, because we really do want to hear what you're saying. So can you tell us which were the bad ones, what's the worst and what's the best?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me a little bit better now as I walk to a different part of my office.
Yep, gotcha.
Good. The worst performers were unfortunately Essentials laundry liquid, Value laundry detergent, and Restore concentrated laundry detergent sheets were actually at the bottom of the pile. They only scored 26 out of 100, unfortunately.
Wow, that's low. So does it carry through that, the crappy ones are the cheap ones?
Not always. So that Restore one was actually one of the most expensive boxes out there at $12.50 for the 60 laundry sheets in there. So price isn't always a good indicator of how well they're going to perform. The only way you can really do it is if you test a whole bunch of them like we did, and then we can tell you what ones are good and what ones aren't. Okay, the best one then was what? The Persil with a touch of comfort. So that one came out at, if you're comparing that 26%, this one came out at 91%. It did a really, really good job of removing stains, and that's the one I would point out that people should go look for. It only cost $6.50 for the box as well, so that was pretty cheap. So with those ones that scored really badly, you might as well just chuck your clothes in the washing machine with no detergent whatsoever. Just go with the water, James. That's the comparable one with those bad ones? Yeah, that's right. Water does an okay job, but you shouldn't buy something that does a worse job. Come on, that's silly. Thanks for your time tonight, James. That's James LePage, who's from Consumer New Zealand. And as he said there were a number of those laundry detergents, and you can get the full list on their website. We'll probably link to it. Some of them were so ineffective, you're better off just washing your clothes in water. Interesting array of stains. Why didn't they test pen? I'm always getting pen on my clothes. If anyone's got any clues of how to get it out, text us on 2101. It is 20 to 6. You're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. And we would love your feedback on anything else you've heard on the program, homai or whakaaro. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time to get to the headlines now. Anei Evie mina pita kōrero.
Thanks, Lisa. Transpower's urging power companies to boost their electricity generation this evening to reduce the risk of power cuts. It's warning if there's not enough power in the network this evening, households may face outages. The Human Rights Commission is warning schools they can't refuse to enrol students or discriminate against them because of their sexual orientation or their family status. Conversion Practices Response Manager Andre Afamasanga told Checkpoint schools need to consider how they maintain and express religious beliefs and special character in a way that doesn't have exclusionary effects upon parents or children. A charities law expert says the Supreme Court's decision that Family First doesn't qualify for charitable status sets a concerning precedent. Charities Law Director Sue Barker says charities should be able to advocate for causes they believe in. At least 46 migrants have been found dead in an abandoned truck on the outskirts of the Texan city of San Antonio. 16 others, including 4 children, were taken to hospital after the vehicle was discovered next to rail tracks. The survivors appeared to be suffering from heat stroke and heat exhaustion. And Wellington mayoral candidate and Labour MP Paul Eagle's been asked to take down digital billboards until the formal election hoarding period starts in 2 months. The billboards telling people to vote Eagle appeared yesterday, the same day he announced his tilt at the mayoralty. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic in the main centres, no unusual delays to report. Our next news and weather is at 6.
Ngā mihi, Evie. After laying low for 2 days, the National MP Simon O'Connor has returned to Parliament with a mea culpa for his caucus. On Saturday, the MP published and then later removed a message supporting the US Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade. Mr O'Connor says it was his own choice to take the post down and denies he and his Conservative colleagues are being gagged. Here's our Deputy Political Editor Craig McCulloch.
Simon O'Connor, for 2 days, has been uncharacteristically quiet.
Sorry, excuse me a second, I've been struggling with my voice all week. it's just possibly a blessing to many.
He found his voice today, finally fronting to reporters on the Facebook post, which has caused such problems for his party.
This was a misstep on my part. This has caused distress and trouble for the party that just wants to focus on big matters.
On Saturday, Mr O'Connor posted, "Today is a good day," a reference to the reversal of Roe v Wade and the ban on abortion now expected in numerous US states. He says he stands by the message.
I'm a pro-lifer, so yes.
But not by the responses it prompted, a deluge of vitriol in the comments.
My Facebook notifications are just going absolutely nuts. Even a sample, I could see this was out of control.
For the National Party and its leader, Christopher Luxon, it was an unhelpful distraction. Since taking charge, Mr Luxon has repeatedly stated he will not change abortion laws if elected Prime Minister. He's had to do so time and time again, a bid to diffuse his personal views, having previously agreed abortion is akin to murder. And so the Facebook post had to go.
For me, it was pretty clear the post was going to come down one way or another.
The move has prompted criticism from Conservative quarters. The lobby group Family First tweeted, "Apparently free speech is dead in the National Party." The former National MP, Alfred Naro, has also been reported saying MPs should be allowed to speak their minds. Simon O'Connor insists he is allowed.
Let me be really clear. There is no gag order. I am very happy with the caucus position that we will not be relitigating in any way, shape or form the abortion issue.
17 of National's current caucus voted against removing abortion from the Crimes Act last term. But, like Mr O'Connor, the Conservative MPs have fallen in line, including Simeon Brown, who liked Mr O'Connor's post on Facebook.
I feel very free to express my views. The reality is that was not the post that I should have liked. I regret liking that post.
We have a range of views in the caucus and that's entirely appropriate, but we have an agreed position.
We will not make any changes to the abortion legislation.
9 Labour MPs also opposed increasing access to abortions in 2020.
Well, my position has always been clear. I've always voted no.
My mum was advised by her doctor to have an abortion when she was carrying me.
My mother was also advised to have an abortion back in 1975. She didn't. I'm here today for that reason.
But they, like National's caucus, accept the legislation as settled and say they won't try to wind it back. That means no matter who wins next year, the commitment's the same. New Zealand's abortion laws will not change.
It is 5:45. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. And let's get to some of your feedback now. Just on our earlier interview with the Human Rights Commission, they've issued a reminder or warning to schools that they should not be discriminating against students wishing to enrol based on their sexual orientation or the makeup of their family. And they've also asked for a meeting with Tauranga's Bethlehem College. Josh from Dunedin has got in touch and says, "Kia ora, I'm a 50-year-old gay man. I'm a good law-abiding citizen. I run a successful business and pay the living wage to my 15 employees. I volunteer and give to charity. I love my folks and extended family, and I am so utterly depressed by the current wave of anti-gay, anti-trans and anti-rainbow crap we're seeing in New Zealand and worldwide. The world is full of issues and problems that have real-life destructive effects on people, and here we are in 2022 still debating whether I can love another guy. Unbelievable," Josh says. Ngā mihi mo te rā e ho. Thank you for your feedback. And on the subject of the waits at Waikato Hospital for acute surgery, this listener says hospitals can't fix the record numbers of admissions and high staff absenteeism from COVID and flu, but they must communicate better to patients who are feeling the impacts. Do keep your feedback coming, 2101 on text or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Emotions have run high at a fiery meeting with Bromley residents this afternoon around the ongoing stench from the Bromley wastewater plant saga. It was the first of 3 community meetings as the Christchurch City Council continues to cop flack for an apparent lack of urgency in fixing the problem at the plant. Adam Burns spoke to some residents after today's meeting.
Firstly, Rob, can you just talk about how satisfied you were in terms of the response from council during that meeting?
I wasn't really very satisfied at all, actually. Still a lot of things that they need to answer for. I would like to know just how much this is costing us taxpayers. There's also I just think there could be more done than they're doing at the pub. There's obviously a lot of anger in the meeting this afternoon. So yeah, a lot of it, we're still not getting what we need to know.
Sally, where do you think a lot of that frustration, a lot of that anger is stemming from? What is the biggest problem at the moment?
Well, I think Christchurch has been through enough already. We've dealt with the earthquakes, we've dealt with the mosque shootings, as people said in there before. We dealt with the soil plant that was going on, and now with this, and we're getting no answers. Mental health is through the roof in Christchurch, especially on this side of town. I've spoken to different organisations who say they're not getting the support. Drug use has gone through the roof, suicide has gone through the roof, and no one's talking about it. I've got my own children who, you get up in the morning, and we live out of zone, and we're told we're not part of it because apparently the smell has borders. It's not good enough. We're all ratepayers in the city. The Bromley wastewater plant is for the whole city. It treats the whole city, and so it's not right that one small area is only getting considered and the rest of the people are being completely ignored. I also think that they really do need to take mental health into account because it's debilitating.
Don, we've just heard about mental health. How is it living out in the eastern suburbs at the moment? How's your mental health, for example?
Oh, look, it's like everyone at the moment, they've been told that things are happening and all this, but, mental health, physical health, well-being is really important, and people are suffering. They're struggling, they've had enough, and people, they're saying that they're doing all the stuff to fix it, but it's still there. And so when it is fixed, the mental health will still be there, the physical health will be there. They'll need to have some kind of follow-up and help for the people out there. And that's what I'm about as well. I'm about preserving life, looking after the well-being and health of everybody that's in this area, but even across the other side of town. It just doesn't start here and finish here, it's over there as well. So everything has to be done to look after our people, look after their well-being, and, do what we can to get it done.
Sally, Council spoke about the complexities in resolving the issue, and obviously there is a feeling that there is a lack of urgency from Council staff. What's left for residents to do now? I know a protest has been spoken about. Is that still a necessary move that some residents will take?
Yes, I think it is necessary because council aren't listening anymore. They're not for the people. It's sad that we only had 3 councillors turn up today. We need representation across the whole city, not just for a few. And confidence in council has never been lower. Something needs to change, and fortunately it's an election year, so people need to get out there and make that change.
And Rob, just illustrate it. What is it like living out here with the smell? I
personally feel ill every time that smell comes across my area. I feel physically sick, and this is not something that I'm making up or making a drama of. It's a reality and it's true. And I can even say today there were 3 councillors in that meeting today, and a lot of the questions were directed at the council, but not one of them would actually come up and answer some of the questions that were put out there today. It was left to people that were speaking on behalf of the council. We've got 3 councillors there. Why didn't they actually come up and speak themselves?
And that was some Bromley residents speaking to Adam Burns there, and the video version of those interviews will be up on our webpage. New Zealand is known for its cold homes, and as winter bites, calls are growing for more support for those who can't keep warm. Charities say more and more people are struggling to pay their power bills, and the winter energy payment and cost of living payment are falling short. Louise Tanuth reports.
Many people are bracing for their next power bill, some still recovering from last month.
I know for a number of people last month's power bill was bigger than they expected, and they're now expecting something bigger this month. Things seem to have multiplied quicker than in previous years.
That's Chair of the Manawatu Budgeting Service, Les Boyd. He's seeing many people living alone asking for help, but Les says there's another storm brewing. families yet to come forward. Low user plans being scrapped, costs going up, and more heaters on with the cold weather are all behind hefty bills. The first cost of living payment of about $116 will be rolled out at the start of August, with another in September and October. Les Boyd says it should have been earlier.
It really needed to, even if it came in at the end of June, it would be much more useful, because I think it's now where people are starting to hit the wall.
For some people, the winter energy payment may apply, which is about $127 a month for a couple with dependent children. But a University of Otago study showed heating one Wellington child's bedroom for a month would eat through almost half the payment.
So unfortunately what that probably means is that they could be trying to save money but then ending up with sort of worse respiratory health because of that. We either pay in increased hospitalisations and, GP visits, or we try and help people stay healthy.
Researcher Dr Caroline Shorter says energy poverty is a significant factor in our winter mortality rates. The colder months are behind about 1,600 deaths and more than 7,000 hospitalisations a year. She says the winter energy payment should be scaled for how many children live in a household.
We know that sort of first 1,000 days of a child's life is a really important time point. We should be looking to subsidise babies in their first year. If you fixed all the sort of damp, mouldy housing, and damp, mouldy housing in our study was the hardest to heat, if you did that, you could reduce the hospitalisations for under 2-year-olds by almost 20%.
More research from the University of Otago found tertiary students are more than twice as likely than the general population to live in damp, mouldy rental housing. Dr Kimberly O'Sullivan says students are feeling the effects of inadequate housing.
Students are renting some of the worst rental properties available. Once it's damp and it's mouldy, it's really hard to fix that. Somebody that said that they had gone on to antidepressants and actually one of the main things that was causing them stress and anxiety was living in a cold environment.
And isolating and recovering from COVID-19 at home is extremely difficult without heating and ventilation.
It is really important to keep your home warm when you are spending greater amounts of time at home, and also for people who are trying to recover from a respiratory illness. We know that being warm and dry is really important for our health and for maintaining our health during those times.
The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment released a definition of energy hardship and wellbeing this month, almost 2 years after they first began working on a definition. National's energy spokesperson Stuart Smith says that's not an acceptable time frame.
Too little, too late. It's taken them over 900 days to come up with 23 words, I think, as a reaction to the pressure we put on them with written questions.
In a written statement, Energy Minister Megan Woods says the government has been tackling energy poverty through their Support for Energy Education program and Warmer Kiwi Homes program. She says work being done by the Energy Hardship Panel is progressing. She says the winter energy payment supports more than 1 million New Zealanders, alongside increases to benefits, superannuation and the minimum wage. She also says the temporary cost of living package will support another 2.1 million low to middle income earners.
The All Blacks have been dealt more disruption ahead of Saturday's sold-out first test against Ireland in Auckland. Star outside back Will Jordan is the latest to test positive for COVID-19, taking the tally to 3 players and 3 coaches out of action after contracting the virus. And as Clay Wilson reports, another big name is also under the weather.
It's hardly ideal going into your first test of the year against a very good team. Will Jordan joining midfielders David Havili and Jack Goodhue and 3 coaches, including head coach Ian Foster, in being struck down with COVID. But All Blacks skipper Sam Cane insists the squad is rolling with the punches.
In terms of disruptiveness, surprisingly it hasn't been too much at all. Coaches are stepping up. We've got a really experienced leadership group now when you look around our group, and one that I trust immensely, and guys in the full pack like Sir Brodie and Sammy Whitelock who have taken charge of things there, and Bodie runs a pretty good cutter out the back, so guys are just stepping up.
Some stepping up, others stepping in. Originally not set to join the All Blacks as a selector and analyst until after the Ireland series, Joe Schmidt has been called in to help at training. It adds an intriguing element to the build-up to this first test, with Schmidt coaching the Irish to great success, including a maiden win over New Zealand. For his part, Kane is happy to have him around.
How lucky are we to be able to call on someone like Joe Schmidt? It's been awesome. To be honest, he's only just been in this morning, so he's helping out with defence predominantly, but it's nice to have some wise eyes looking over things.
One player he wasn't looking over today was Richie Mo'unga. The Crusaders' first 5 missed training with a stomach bug, although he's expected to be okay for Saturday's match. As for the ongoing absence of Foster and assistant coaches John Plumtree and Scott McLeod, Kane says they're steering clear of trying to control too much from afar.
It's hard to get a feel and to coach when you're not in the room itself, and I think we all agree it's the best thing to allow the people who are currently here to steer the ship, but we know that they're working hard behind the scenes, looking at footage, having little one-on-ones with guys, little conversations to make sure they can help out where they can without being disruptive.
Avoiding any more of that would be handy. The All Blacks team to play Ireland is named on Thursday.
And let's get to your feedback, a lot of it coming in around the hospital, Waikato Hospital, and a patient there waiting 11 days for acute surgery. Margot's got in touch and says expect it to get worse. We cannot staff all the theatres, and due to a new training approach for anaesthetic technicians, it is likely that the theatre staffing will get even worse in the next few months. For years, senior doctors have pleaded for a separation of acute unplanned surgery and elective planned surgery. There's been a refusal to invest. In fact, we have less beds now, less than 700, than when I started at Waikato Hospital at the turn of the century, when there was more than 1,000, says Margot. Another listener says, my partner has been in and out of Waikato Hospital 4 times in 2 weeks, waiting over 37 hours for surgery after being diagnosed with sepsis, a life-threatening infection. The official bed ward was in a corridor. We also saw things such as trays of needles that were on the ground for about 8 hours and waited 13 hours in emergency. Despite this very obvious staff shortage, everyone working there was lovely, professional and helpful. They do their best, especially the nurses. It's obvious how stretched they are.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening. Kia ora tātou. Ko Evie Ashton tēnei. A charities law expert says the Supreme Court's decision that Family First doesn't qualify for charitable status sets a concerning precedent. Charities Law Director Sue Barker says charities should be able to advocate for causes they believe in. She says Family First was first deregistered for opposing the same-sex marriage bill, and while people may not agree with the organisation's views, that shouldn't be enough to deregister it as a charity.
The problem with using that as kind of the yardstick is that what happens when we have a decision maker who has a different view? And are we going to kind of lurch from one view to another? And I really am worried that if Families First can be deregistered for engaging in the democratic process, any charity can.
Sue Barker says the decision highlights the need for the government to clearly define what a charitable purpose is as part of its review of the Charities Act. The Charities Registration Board is welcoming the Supreme Court decision. The board says the ruling provides clarity on a complex area of charities law. It says the finding also appears to endorse the board's 2017 decision that Family First's purposes weren't exclusively charitable. The board says it will now reflect carefully on the judgment to ensure its approach to assessing charitable purpose is in line with the decision. Power companies are being urged to boost their electricity generation tonight to reduce the risk of power cuts. The lines company Transpower has asked the companies to ensure energy and reserve offers are accurate and to increase supply. It warns households may face outages if there's not enough power in the network. The peak period ends at 7:30 p.m. tonight. If the situation worsens, Transpower could declare another grid emergency like it did last Thursday morning. At least 46 bodies have been discovered inside a truck in Texas, which had been left near a highway known for being a popular route for people smugglers. 16 others were taken to hospital suffering from severe heat stroke. 4 are children. Local officials are hopeful they'll survive. The BBC's Angelica Casas has more from San Antonio.
It's dark now here in San Antonio, but the air is still warm on the far south side of the city, what is now the scene of a mass casualty event. The victims, presumed to be migrants, were traveling without air conditioning or water. Only a few law enforcement vehicles and police tape make evident what happened here. At least 16 people, including children, were sent to nearby hospitals. Already, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has blamed the deaths on President Biden, saying they are results of his open border policies. The investigation has been handed over to Homeland Security.
Waikato District Health Board has apologised to a woman who needs surgery on her broken leg and has spent 11 days waiting in hospital. A fall from a horse on Friday, June 17th, left Georgina Lloyd largely immobilised with her left foot skewed to the side. She needs screws and plates before her broken bones can heal. But she says she waited in the emergency department for 7 hours after an ambulance transferred her from Thames Hospital. Ever since, Ms Lloyd has been largely confined to a bed in the ear, nose and throat ward, waiting for surgery. The Health Board has moved Ms Lloyd to the orthopaedic ward and says there was a lack of clear communication about her treatment plan. ACT leader David Seymour says he can't understand the personal views of National MP Simon O'Connor following a post he made at the weekend about abortion. On Saturday, the socially conservative National MP posted, "Today is a good day," in reference to the US Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v Wade. He took it down following a discussion with National leader Christopher Luxon. Mr Seymour says if National needs ACT to form a coalition next year, a commitment not to repeal New Zealand's abortion laws will be a bottom line.
Oh, it's a no-brainer. If they seriously want to fight a coalition negotiation over that, they're going to go nowhere.
David Seymour says he was astonished by the US Supreme Court's move and is proud New Zealand voted to decriminalise abortion in 2020. West Coast Regional Council has approved a $54 million flood resilience proposal for Westport today. The first of its kind proposal is a co-investment with central government, which will provide more than $40 million of funding. Councillor Laura Cole-McLaughlin says the proposal will be crucial to getting people out of harm's way.
Regardless of where council ends up, it will not change my vote to support the case because I am not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is critical. This business case is critical to the future of Westport.
Buller District Council will also vote on the proposal tomorrow, which includes building flood walls and legislation to restrict development in flood zones. If passed, the final decision will be up to local government minister Nanaia Mahuta. And Wellington mayoral candidate and Labour MP Paul Eagle's been asked to remove digital billboards until the formal election hoarding period starts in 2 months. But Paul Eagle's keeping them up for a few more days yet. Rosie Gordon reports.
The large digital billboards telling people to vote Eagle appeared yesterday, the same day he announced his tilt at the mayoralty. Wellington City Council investigated and found the ads should go. Wellington City Electoral Officer Warwick Lamp says candidates can't put up signs until the 27th of August and must take them down the day before the election, a rule which aims to level the playing field. Paul Eagle's got his own legal advice and believes the billboards are lawful. He says he'd always planned to take the billboards down this weekend after running them the week of his announcement.
To sport, and All Blacks captain Sam Cane is happy they had Joe Schmidt in reserve ahead of this weekend's first test against Ireland. The former Irish coach has been called in to help out at training, with head coach Ian Foster and assistants John Plumtree and Scott McLeod all isolating with COVID-19. Schmidt wasn't originally set to join the All Blacks as a selector and analyst until after the Ireland series, but Cane is glad he's around now to lend a hand.
How lucky are we to be able to call on someone like Joe Schmidt? It's been awesome. To be honest, he's only just been in this morning, so he's helping out with defence predominantly, but it's nice to have some wise eyes looking over things.
New Zealand will have a chance to exact revenge for their 3-0 series loss in England when they host Brendan McCullum's side in 2 tests next February. England beat the Black Caps by 7 wickets in the 3rd test at Headingley to sweep the series. The 2 tests will be played in Tauranga and Wellington, with the series opener to be the first day-night test in New Zealand since 2018. The Test World Champions will also host a 2-match series against Sri Lanka in March. And Rafael Nadal returns to Wimbledon for the first time in 3 years. But for the first time at the All England's club, he won't have sparring partner Roger Federer for company. Their epic rivalry includes 3 successive Wimbledon finals from 2006. Federer has played every Wimbledon since 1999, winning a record 8 titles, but is missing due to injury, and Nadal says it's strange not having him around. Nadal has his first round match tonight. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, we've got a window on the world of menopause and diet. What best to eat during that time of transition? Brian Roper assesses the government's push to transition us into electric cars, even if those cars are just electric part of the time. And in this week's Sci-Fi Sci-Fact, Justin Hodgkiss looks at the plausibility of an alien life form taking over your body. It's a night's thing with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
You're back with Lisa Owen and Checkpoint next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Wednesday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Showers with possible thunderstorms in Northland today. Rain in the far north tomorrow. Waikato, Waitomo, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Also Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Cloudy periods, scattered showers tomorrow. From Taranaki to Kapiti, including Taumaru Nui and Taihape, cloud is increasing. Rain is developing in Taranaki this evening and elsewhere tomorrow morning, clearing tomorrow afternoon. For Wellington, also for Nelson and Marlborough, periods of rain possibly heavy, clearing tomorrow morning and then it's mainly fine. For Canterbury, patchy rain is clearing this evening and it's fine tomorrow. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, partly cloudy with 1 or 2 showers. Rain in Fiordland tomorrow morning, possibly thundery, and showers are increasing in Westland for a time. Mainly fine today in Otago and Southland. Occasional rain about Southland and Clutha tomorrow and a few spots elsewhere. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, rain at times tomorrow. It's 9 minutes past 6. I'll have the updated news headlines for you at 6:30.
Nā mihi iwi, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The bodies of at least 46 migrants have been found inside a truck in Texas, one of the worst incidents of its type in American history. The 18-wheeler had been abandoned near a highway well known for being a popular route for people smugglers coming via Mexico. Close to 20 people have been taken to hospital with heat stroke, including 4 children. Those who died were all adults. There were no signs of water or air conditioning inside the truck. CNN's Lee Walderman has more from San Antonio.
The Hidden Cove Indian Creek neighborhood is just across this wooded area to my right. People living there who we spoke to say they knew something was wrong as soon as they heard those helicopters flying overhead.
I mean, these people come to San Antonio to come and work. I mean, they really don't do nothing to nobody, That's my concern, but how did they bring these people at least and just leave them there?
Shock, disbelief, and sadness.
That's very sad that they had to go like that. They were just looking for a better life, and for them to just lose their life just to try to get over here and just try to make a better life for them and their kids.
It's something sad because they're trying to come over here for a better living and they wind up dead.
People living near Quintana Road, where dozens of people were found dead in an 18-wheeler, are struggling to grasp why this happened. Loretta Escalante and Omar Rivera both knew something was happening when they heard the helicopters overhead.
We were eating right now and I heard it. I'm like, something's going on. What's happening? But I didn't thought it was behind there. Imagine,
Does it feel strange that it's this close?
Yes, because that's too close. Imagine what did they have them, like in a trailer?
In a 18-wheeler.
Oh, wow.
We're from the valley, and this is something that is common. This is something like crossing people and seeing people cross, trying to just find a better life. Like that's something common that I've seen.
Each of the people we spoke with said they're just shocked at how many people died in this situation. They said their thoughts and prayers are with everyone who was taken to the hospital, and they're hopeful that death toll doesn't rise.
One of the most brazen terrorist acts in European history. That's how Ukraine's president has described Russia's latest missile strikes, which have killed at least 18 people in a shopping centre. At least 1,000 people were believed to have been inside, and so far 59 have been reported injured. The G7 group of nations meeting in Germany have already called it a war crime. The BBC's Nick Beak has more from the central city of Kremenchuk.
This is the smouldering wreckage of Russia's latest attack. A shopping centre, although it's barely recognisable tonight. As those G7 leaders were meeting, President Putin was sending his own message, and his missiles were hitting Ukrainian civilians. This inferno is not a Ukrainian military target. It's a Ukrainian shopping centre. No weapons here, just families. Russia's latest devastating missile attack. Today, on the central city of Kremenchuk. Inside the building, panic. Is anyone alive? A man calls out. there's a faint answer. Where are you? Come here, the man says again. Monday afternoon shoppers became paramedics, helping to load the injured into ambulances. Those nearby at the time of impact struggling to make sense of what had happened.
I was not far away from the place where it happened, some 500 meters away, and people were running around. And after about 30 minutes, I decided to go and check out the place. The center was just destroyed. I'm out of words. I did not expect that something like this could happen in my town.
As they began to clear the wreckage, the number of dead was rising, each piece of debris revealing a clearer picture of the damage done. Well, for hours now, they've been bringing out these pieces of mangled metal from the shopping centre, leaving them here, and the work goes on even though it's now pitch black, and that is because there is an urgency. Many people were in this shopping centre at the time of the attack, and the fear is that many more people have died. Speaking at the shopping centre, Ukraine's Interior Minister told us this was an act of terrorism perpetrated by Putin and the Russian Federation. President Zelensky claimed up to 1,000 people could have been inside at the time and had these words.
Only completely messed up terrorists for whom there's no place on earth could strike such a place. It's not an accidental hit by missiles, it's a deliberate Russian strike.
This carnage is more than 80 miles away from Russian-occupied land, so it was most likely the work of a guided missile. Why here? We don't know. But Moscow is showing this city and the watching world its assault on Ukraine and its people is not going to stop.
A new poll in the US shows a majority of Americans disagree with the decision to overturn abortion rights in the country. The CBS poll found 59% disapprove of the Supreme Court's decision. That figure rises to 67% among women. A slim majority also believe it's a step backward for America. CNN's Sarah Seidner spoke to women on both sides of the debate.
We love life! Our life! Stand up!
All over America, the signs are clear. After 49 years, the battle over abortion rights has been re-energized because the Supreme Court ruled there is no longer a constitutional right to abortion.
We know that banning abortion doesn't take away the need for abortion. So people are still going to do whatever it takes to get that care.
Mira Shaw is a physician and activist who provides abortions and other health care at a Planned Parenthood clinic.
I have cared for the protesters, and I treat them the exact same way that I would treat any patient.
Are you saying that a protester has had an abortion?
Absolutely. I have seen that in my career, that I have provided abortion care to a protester outside of one of our health centers.
Fight for life!
Lila Rose is fighting to ban abortion rights completely. Her group, Live Action, is at the forefront of a new generation of women who believe abortion is not only wrong, but criminal.
We were thrilled learning that the Roe v. Wade had been overturned. It's not complete justice.
Do you think abortion should be criminalized? In other words, doctors and people who help women have abortions and women themselves should be arrested or fined?
Abortion is homicide and it should be treated as such.
So what you're saying is that women, in your estimation, should not have a choice about abortion, and that should be the law of the land.
Homicide should not be something that is permitted, celebrated, tax-funded in our communities, period.
Dr. Shaw fears that is where the next round of this fight may be headed. At least 10 states have effectively banned abortion since Friday's ruling, although 2 bans are already being challenged in court. Another 5 states are expected to enact trigger laws limiting abortions in the coming days and weeks. Soon, abortion could be illegal or extremely limited in more than half of America.
It is 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. The UN is appealing to the world for help after the devastating floods in Bangladesh. More than 80 people have died and millions are stranded. It's the worst flooding the northeast of the country has seen in a century. The BBC's Rajni Dayanathan has more.
In northeast Bangladesh, hundreds of villages are submerged, entire districts underwater, as flash floods hit much of the Sylhet region. For people living here, these are the worst floods in living memory. Millions have been forced to leave their homes. Shumana's corrugated iron house was badly battered by the rains. Trapped inside, she and her family left by boat to try and find food when the boat capsized.
We were trying to reach the other side of the bridge. I freaked out seeing the amount of water. We were not able to row the boat. It was filled with water. We couldn't steer it with our hands. I fell into the water and lost my senses.
The country's military says it'll continue rescue operations. For those now in temporary shelter, the misery goes on, with the risk of waterborne diseases, hunger, and the challenge of finding a permanent home.
Wimbledon is back with full capacity crowds for the first time in 3 years, but a lot of the focus is on who isn't there, with the decision by organisers to ban Russian and Belarusian tennis players still proving divisive. The ABC's Isabella Higgins reports from London.
And some of the world's best tennis players took to the famous all-grass courts. They were once again greeted with the roar of a full stadium. Day one saw some of the big names win on centre court, including Serbian star Novak Djokovic. British teen sensation Emma Raducanu showed no nerves playing to a home crowd. Her Wimbledon campaign has started strong after winning in straight sets.
Emma Raducanu impresses on her centre court debut.
The day was almost derailed by typical British weather. Rain forced suspensions of early matches, but crowds were still happy to be back at the hallowed grounds. Mother and son Deirdre and Owen O'Scarlett travelled from Ireland to attend.
Just the best of the Grand Slams, isn't it? You know, everything, all the tradition and everything. So yeah.
And how about yourself? Are you excited?
We're really. This is a really special trip for my son and myself. Like, we've never been to Wimbledon, and we're excited to see anything at all. You know, anything Wimbledon related. Seeing anyone on any court, excited about it. Yeah.
Tournament officials are still being forced to defend their decision to ban Russian and Belarusian players, including world number one Daniil Medvedev. In response, the ATP and WTA have stripped the event of their ranking points. Global Professor of Sport Simon Chadwick from the EM Lyon Business School says sport is becoming increasingly political.
And one can imagine the messaging coming out of 10 Downing Street is that we don't want Russians, we don't want Russians winning, we don't want anything undermining brand Britain and rules-based order.
Australia's Nick Kyrgios will play later today. He weighed in on the ban on Russian players.
I don't think it was a good idea to ban the Russian players to play. I think Medvedev is the best we have in our sport right now. I think whenever we have cameras on and a lot of people tuning in, you want our best players to be on showcase.
He also took a swipe at the tournament's famous all-white dress code.
I mean, I always want to wear all black. I don't think it's something that's going to change, but I don't know, I think it'd be cool to allow, a black headband or a black sweatband, but obviously Wimbledon doesn't really care what looks cool.
Some have described this year's Grand Slam as an exhibition event, but it's clear the tradition and prestige of this tournament is still enough to attract crowds and the world's best players.
The rental listing reads, bring your clothes and move into this gorgeous property in the heart of North Adelaide. Well, suffice to say, there won't be room for much else. You see, the studio apartment has no stove, no laundry, and its bathroom is enclosed in perspex right next to the kitchen sink. Yick. So what would you pay for this 25 square metre apartment? The ABC's Angus Randall reports on the $400 a week rental that's gone viral.
It's certainly a statement piece, a studio apartment with a toilet and shower in the same room as your bed and kitchen. Frosted glass panels are all that protects your modesty. Rental advocate Shay is trying to imagine who would live in such a space.
So I don't really know how someone is supposed to live a functioning life in that room.
Shay says Adelaide is dealing with a surge of people struggling with what she calls secondary homelessness, those stuck couch surfing or living in a caravan in someone's driveway. So for someone like that, this studio listing may offer a temporary relief.
We're in a rental crisis, so I think more properties that were previously Airbnbs might be listed as longer-term rentals, but even if someone is planning on staying somewhere for a short-term rental, they still deserve to be able to cook a hot meal in their house where they're paying rent.
The listing's real estate agent, Rachel Laurie, says the property was relatively cheaper than other studio apartments this close to the CBD, and the $400 a week rent includes electricity, gas, water and internet bills. After going viral online, the listing has now been removed from major rental sites. The CEO of the Real Estate Institute of SA, Kane Cook, told ABC Adelaide properties like this can play a role in a tight market.
Certainly this is a sign of the times and the major sort of shortage we have across rental and houses to buy. You know, we've got a supply issue across both sectors of the market, and part of us applauds the landlord and the agent for looking at this as a temporary solution for people who don't have a house over their heads. But the other side of the coin is certainly it's an indicator that things are tough out there.
The latest report from property site Domain showed Adelaide had the worst market for renters in the country. Vacancy rates stand at just 0.3%. This is while the South Australian Council of Social Services reports rents going up by more than 7%. Paz Forgione is from Anti-Poverty Network SA. He says the situation is grim.
For people who are renting, who are on very low incomes, things have never been more stressful because we've got the combination of huge increases in rent, what's happening to inflation, and of course the expected massive increases in power bills coming in from July 1. So we're hearing like horror stories about people really struggling to cover their expenses, and after they pay their rent, really finding it hard to ensure that they can still cover the cost of food, bills, medicine.
He's calling for a return to the regulations brought in during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the rules, which came to an end last year, South Australia joined other states in banning evictions due to unpaid rent and freezing rent spikes.
Well, the state government has powers here. They can legislate to freeze rent increases that people don't have to worry about seeing their rent dump every 12 months, and we know that's a big stress and for people knowing that at the end of your lease, the landlord can choose to increase the rent by whatever amount they think they can get away with.
South Australia's Human Services Minister, Nat Cook, says the state's rental assistance program is under review.
We have to be really careful about any further unintended consequences around what might happen to rent and also what might happen to property conditions under a circumstance where we do impose some restrictions on the capacity of a property owner to actually get their, make their money on the upgrades or the investment that they've made.
Back in North Adelaide, the agents for the glass bathroom studio apartment say they expect to fill the listing by the end of the week.
And finally tonight, miners in the Klondike goldfields of Canada's far north have made an extraordinary discovery. They've dug up the mummified remains of a whole baby woolly mammoth frozen in the ground. The BBC's Chantal Hartle has more.
Photos show the mammoth with its trunk, ears and tail near perfectly preserved. Even more remarkably, for a creature believed to have died some 30,000 years ago, its skin and hair are still visible too. It was found in the Trondequichin First Nation territory of the Yukon, a region which has a long history of uncovering Ice Age fossils. At first glance, experts believe the mammoth is a female, around 140 centimetres long. She's been named Noonchoga, which translates to big baby animal in the traditional language spoken by Indigenous people in the area. Grant Zazula is a scientist who studies fossils in the Yukon. He describes feeling overcome with emotion when he first saw the creature.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This is something, as a paleontologist, I've dreamed of my whole life. I've seen photographs of mammoths like this from Siberia. I've thought about what I would feel like when I saw something like this. And when I saw baby Noonchoga for the first time, it was an incredibly powerful experience.
Other similar finds have been made in Alaska, where a partial mammoth calf named Effie was discovered in 1948. And more recently, in 2007, a 42,000-year-old infant woolly mammoth named Luba was found in Siberia. For the First Nation, the most important thing now is to make sure the creature is treated with respect by all who study it. Debbie Nagano is the Director of Heritage for Trondequichin.
To the elders, it's their relation. It came from Mother Earth. It's been there for a long time. They were trying to calculate how many generations back were connected to this baby, and it was close to 14,000 generations. We were sharing the earth with the baby, so things like that, you've got to really, at all times treat it with respect, for sure.
It may not have been the kind of gold the miners had been hoping to find, but their discovery will help experts build a bigger picture of the Yukon's Ice Age past.
And to some of your final thoughts before we head off for the evening on inclusiveness in schools. Sean from Havelock North got in touch to say, I'm an immigrant and a gay man with 3 children in private schools. My opening statement to all 3 schools was, I'm a gay man with 3 adopted children. My children do not have a mum, they have 2 dads. The schools I chose have been welcoming. I understand special character, but I will not place my children in a school that discriminates against my family. It is my belief that every school should be required to recognise and welcome all families, regardless of what those families look like. And Kevin's got in touch to comment on Radio New Zealand's reporting on abortion, says, recently I found it to be very one-sided. I support Simon O'Connor's view that abortion is wrong. I feel that life begins at conception and we should defend all life. I think you would find this is a more widely held view than you are reporting, says Kevin. Thanks for getting in touch. Oh, and thanks for the tip on getting pen out of clothes. Eucalyptus oil for pen on clothes and sunlight soap, I'm told. I'll give it a crack. The Late News team will keep you updated throughout the night. Remember, if you missed anything on the show, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. Tomorrow from 5 a.m, First Up speaks to Professor Michael Baker about how to navigate winter bugs, and there's a lot of them at the moment, and how to avoid getting COVID-19. Kaua e wariwari te atatero i a mātou kōrero. Don't forget, you can check out all our videos and stories online. Do have a great evening, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, I'm Evie Ashton. Power companies are being urged to boost their electricity generation tonight to reduce the risk of power cuts. A charities law expert says the Supreme Court's decision that Family First doesn't qualify for charitable status sets a concerning precedent. Waikato District Health Board has apologised to a woman who needs surgery on her broken leg and has spent 11 days waiting in hospital. And West Coast Regional Council has approved a $54 million flood resilience proposal for Westport. Those are the headlines.